Welcome to the final panel today, Consumer and Community Benefits of Clean Energy, which is going to explore the consumer and community perspectives on the transition to 100% clean energy, which will be key to informing us on workable strategies. This session is going to explore how this transition impacts people and how diverse communities can realize economic and workforce opportunities. Moderating the panel is IREC CEO and President Larry Sherwood, who you heard from first thing this morning. Joining Larry on stage is Ruth Norton, the President and CEO of the Green and Healthy Homes Initiative. Pari, Kasotia, Mid-Atlantic Director for Vote Solar. Stephen Leitner, Chief Operating Officer with CAP Solar. Janine Migden-Ostrander, Principal with the Regulatory Assistance Project, known as RAP. And Emma Searson, Director of the 100% Renewable Energy Campaign for Environment America. Larry, they're all yours.
Thank you very much. We look forward to a great conversation. I think we've heard earlier today in the opening session, there were one of the speakers who said that we need to enable all consumers to use clean energy and have options for all consumers. And Senator from Puerto Rico said that we need to have citizens asking for clean energy and involved in the process. So we've heard earlier today a number of references to consumers and how the community benefits can be realized, and we're going to delve into those topics deeper now. So what I'm going to start with is to ask each of our panelists to very quickly give a little bit of information on your organization and your history and your relationship to this topic. And we're not going to do this panel just going down the row each time. So I'll call on people and we'll sort of mix it up a little bit.
So be prepared.
What?
Be prepared. I said be prepared.
Yeah. So since you said that, Ruth Ann, maybe I'll let you.
Good on you. Hey, everybody. I am Ruth Norton, and I'm from just up the road in Baltimore. So first of all, come visit Baltimore, greatest city in America that people don't know much about. But I'm the president and CEO of the Green and Healthy Homes Initiative, and I want to say thanks for having this, because in the last 2 days, 10 conferences that I'm speaking at in the next 3 months have all been canceled. So glad to see those who are moving forward. And one last shout out before I tell about what I want to talk about. I want to give a shout out to the last panel on workforce development and the opportunities for economic mobility that the field that you're working in offers to the communities in which I work. And I want to thank you for that. But the Green and Healthy Homes Initiative was founded 30 years ago. We focused on lead poisoning in the city of Baltimore, which was at the time named the #1 city for the highest concentration of poisoned kids in America. And we endeavored to take on and eradicate that issue, which we're down by 99%. But as we began to really look at being in people's homes and what was necessary to happen to eradicate lead hazards in the home, it became increasingly clear that we had to look at those things that were also causing other health impacts like asthma and energy. And so we started to expand our work. And the deeper we dove and the more that we invested in lead and healthy housing, we began to understand that energy efficiency and weatherization were the driver of whether or not families would remain in stable, healthy housing, whether or not we were really paying attention to equity and whether we were paying attention to wealth retention. And what we also found out is that by our own investment in energy efficiency, to to stabilized families, we began to see the enormous health benefits, respiratory disease, injury, cardiac, and even mental health. And so our organization has now emerged after 30 years as the leading organization that does that calculation on the health benefits of energy efficiency, lead reduction, asthma reduction. And we have been looking at this angle of where renewable energy can better become foundational. We work in the lowest income communities in America, and so that work we are doing, in short, is to advance racial equity and address the social determinants of health through housing. So we're really glad to be here.
Great. Thank you. Janine?
Good afternoon, and I want to thank NREL for pulling together this excellent conference. So thank you for that and inviting me to participate in it. My name is Janine Migden-Ostrander. I'm with the Regulatory Assistance Project. Prior to that, I was the Consumers Counsel for the state of Ohio for about 8 years. And during the course of my career, I have represented low-income groups and environmental groups. And yes, there is an intersection between the two where they can come together and provide mutual benefits. I've also served on the board of the National Low-Income Energy Consortium and Ohio Partners for Affordable Energy. So in joining RAP, I brought in the consumer perspective in terms of helping to advise governments and commissions on clean energy policy. And RAP has written extensively in a lot of areas involving low-income, community solar, and other issues, regulatory issues. You name it, we're involved in it.
Great. Thanks, Janine. Up on the screen, we have Emma. Emma, can you introduce yourself and your organization?
Hello. Yes, can you hear me all right?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for having me remotely. I'm so excited to be here. I am the 100% Renewable Campaign Director with Environment America. So Environment America is a national environmental nonprofit and advocacy organization with the mission of protecting clean air, clean water, public lands, and nested within all of that, combating climate. We, as an organization, for the last several decades, have been using our national arm and our network of 27 state organizations across the country to work on renewable energy issues as a part of that mission. In the last couple of years, in particular, Environment America and our state affiliates have helped to win commitments to 100% renewable energy in states like California, Washington, New Mexico, and Maine, and we're currently working towards similar commitments in 15 other states. And a huge reason that we support renewable energy is because of the community and consumer benefits. Of course, renewable energy will also ensure a cleaner and healthier future and environment, but that applies to communities and consumers as well. And in my role in particular, I have worked on reports about the benefits of distributed renewable resources like rooftop solar and how those deliver benefits to not only the folks who directly benefit from those installations, but for consumers writ large and for the environment. And we've consistently found that renewable energy is really beneficial for all ratepayers, for the grid, and to society as a whole. So I'm so excited to participate in this panel remotely today.
Great. Steve?
Hi, my name is Stephen Leitner. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of CAP Solar. CAP Solar is a nonprofit solar developer that focuses on families and households below 200% of the federal poverty level. It does this because it is a subsidiary of a community action agency. Community action agencies were born out of the Lyndon Johnson War War on Poverty. Sorry about that. What? This isn't being recorded, is it? The helicopters are coming. The War on Poverty 54 years ago. So our anti-poverty group has been helping local communities for 54 years. We were looking into entering the renewable energy market as just a consumer, and because of the credit or lack of credit of a nonprofit, even one with $40 million in grant funding, we couldn't find a reputable solar developer that would work with us. So through some of the board members that we had and some of the knowledge from business that I had, as well as a great team, we started our own solar development company with an investment, private investment, not grant, private investment from the Urban Investment Group from Goldman Sachs to pilot using solar just around New Jersey at first for other organizations like us that could not get a reputable solar developer to, one, do the job, and two, give them a fair price based on who they were. We target a 50% discount on the cost of power at a beginning. Our investors know that if we can get it to go farther, we will, and that a set IRR from them, a return on investment, means that that's what they'll get if it works for the deal. But if that means power is 80% off and we're leaving money on the table, so be it. With the advent of the community solar regulations in New Jersey, we started to think a little bit larger based on the social benefit of what we do. And we have attracted very large social impact and opportunity zone funds to roll this mission out. And how can we roll this mission out to the nation? It's because we are one of 1,100 community action agencies in the United States. Just our Greater Bergen Community Action serves about 50,000 individuals a year. That is 200%. That's the Head Start regulations, weatherization regulations. So it's 200% of poverty and below. There are 15 of those just in New Jersey. And there are 1,100 of those in the nation, and each one of them has their own network associated with their nonprofit. So it is a massive, massive network, which has attracted some very, very interesting funding, and that funding has been very open to the extreme out-of-the-box nature of how we should be developing solar for those who really can use the maximum benefit of not only the green power, but the lowest cost possible.
Great, thank you. Steve, Pari?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Larry, for having me here, and thanks to IREC for putting this conference. So again, my name is Pari Kasotia. I serve as the Mid-Atlantic Director for a nonprofit advocacy organization called Vote Solar. So I spend most of my time in New Jersey, and if you're following New Jersey's market, in 2018, the Clean Energy Act was passed, which created the RPS for 50% by 2030, and it also created the Community Solar Pilot Program. And Vote Solar played an instrumental role in getting the pilot program passed. So we were pretty happy with that, but we took a pause and we thought about, well, how does this benefit low-income and environmental justice communities? So last year in December, we launched our new campaign called New Jersey Shines. And basically what we want to make sure is that all that progress that's happening in New Jersey is benefiting these communities. So under our New Jersey Shines, we have some really aggressive targets that we are pushing for in the legislature. One of them is increasing but also reducing the energy burden for 250,000 households, low-income households, by 2030, or 35% of the low-income population, whichever is larger. 400 megawatt of storage sited in low-income and environmental justice communities that can create resiliency benefits. Besides clean energy access, we thought, well, the benefits should go further than that. What about job creation and workforce development? So we're also asking the legislature to create a target to train at least 2,500 individuals by 2025 in the clean energy sector, and also creating very robust efforts on educating and doing outreach for these communities. So that's where we are right now. So we'll see how things progress. We are just getting started.
Great. Pari, let me just stick with you and ask, as you're working and trying to make programs that give clean energy options for all consumers, what's the role that the consumer themselves plays in that process?
Sure. So I think when you really talk about 100% clean energy by 2050 or whatever your time frame is, that literally means 100% have access to clean energy and are part of the clean energy economy. So by default, I think everyone needs to have a voice in that conversation on that planning process and how we get there. As we work in New Jersey and as we talk to our low-income and environmental justice advocates, it's apparent that they are the best source of information on what their needs are. So when we talk to EJ partners, pollution is a big issue for them. We talk about the impacts of climate change on our health in the years to come, but we have these communities that are already impacted. And so they want clean energy, but they have other priorities. And oftentimes those goals are not aligned with the mainstream policy priorities. So I think we all need to create a medium where different stakeholders can come together and really work towards policies that meet the intermediate goals for these communities, but also the long-term goals for all of us, which is 100% clean energy. So to your question, everyone should be educated and be part of that discourse.
Great, thank you. Janine, from your experience as a consumer advocate and from the work that you do, how does the customer experience and customer implementation get factored into policy decisions and the regulatory process?
Well, first of all, I think there is a tendency to view residential customers as a homogeneous group, and it's not. There are a lot of differentials. For example, you have differentials by income, low income versus higher income households. You have rural versus urban, and that makes a difference in terms of where you're relying on a competitive market to bring services and products to customers. Where you have rural areas, those customers are traditionally underserved because as a business, you go where you can get the biggest bang for the buck, and that's in the urban areas. So you have those kind of issues that also impact. And then you also have just the individual customers. Some customers love the new gadgets. They want to explore them. They want to try them. They have a strong commitment to environment and doing these things. Other customers just want it simple. They got enough stress. They got enough going on in their life. Just tell me what I need to do. Give me a bill. So you have different customers, and that have different perspectives, and you have to recognize it. So from a regulatory standpoint, I think what it comes down to is designing programs so that they work. And I have seen in the past utilities, not all utilities, just some, design programs for failure because they don't really want to do it. So it's incumbent upon the regulators, the advocates, to make sure that the program, and the utilities, and there's some utilities that are really committed to doing it right, to design programs that will work for customers. For example, time of use rates designed in a way that is simple, maybe with an opt-in, with shadow billing, so customers can see over the course of a year what their potential savings can be that will educate them and convince them to go forward. Aggregation is another very strong tool. In Ohio, which is where I'm from, we have aggregation for the supply of a marketer. And if you go on the PUCO's website, you can find 54 marketers. I get all of my power from 100% renewable from a renewable energy marketer. But there are also other communities that will aggregate for their customers and provide a renewable product or a partially renewable product. And that makes it simple because the municipality is saying, I negotiated this deal, it's below what the incumbent rate is, you'll save money, great, sign me up. Or if I don't do anything, I'm automatically signed in depending upon the product. So making it simple for customers so that they don't have to do all of this research but can take advantage of possibilities. And that aggregation should also extend to distributed energy resources so that demand response programs that can provide services back to customers, putting in a chip on appliances or other kinds of mechanisms that can send signals to customers. Make it easy, make it beneficial to them. And for residential, the one-on-one is just really difficult. If you can aggregate with a trusted entity for those customers, that's a good way to go. And I have a lot more ideas, but I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you. Steve, you've done, are working on some community solar projects and have worked to make those accessible to the populations that you work with. How have you made that work?
So the key is in the Community Action Network. We partner with local community action networks who are sister networks. We do the same things. We speak the same languages. And we gauge their interest. We are pre-financed. We have access to money, which is unusual in the Community Action Network if it doesn't come from a grant. But going in with this large idea of saying, if you build it, they will come, that we can provide the financing and the know-how. You don't have to do anything except interface locally. What can you do? So in the state of Oregon, it just so happens that one of the leaders of the Central Oregon CAP, called CAPO, happens to be the energy advocate for the state of Oregon. So it makes it very handy. He wrote the low-income community solar laws, which makes it even more handy, and it made it the perfect test bed to be there. We are able, with a de minimis land lease from the county, to remove those costs from the equation, with the proper social impact funder to lessen the IRR to an acceptable rate for their return, for us to construct a model there that not only will push the cost of power down about 50%, but will allow us to then take a little bit of a risk. And we have and the nonprofit toolkit for finances, to me, is much larger than a for-profit. It's like a playground for me in there. But we've come up with some tools that will assure the funder that they won't lose any money. So because of that, we don't really care. And this is across the country, and all the projects we're doing, we don't really care if the client has no credit. So we will take energy assistance customers, and we will sign them up for the most inexpensive power that's humanly possible with this one project. Remember, we are an anti-poverty group that happens to be a solar developer, and that is a hugely important distinction. So that takes care of the energy efficiency, the energy assistance clients, pardon me. And then we devised for this one specific project to take a portion of that power and allow the sponsoring community action agency to use it in their homeless shelters, their food banks, their Head Start schools, et cetera, because it serves the same exact clients that the energy assistance households. Then in turn, for helping us negotiate a piece of land between the Facebook and Apple data center for de minimis, the county is going to take a portion of that as well, with the understanding that they are going to power the buildings in their county that serve the same low-income people. This is a 3-megawatt project at the beginning. Most likely will turn into a 13-megawatt project by the time it's finished. It's funded. It's ready to go. It's incredibly replicable. We have similar projects that we're looking at in Maine, New Hampshire. We have some very interesting ones in Arizona. There's one in Ohio, New Jersey, Minnesota. I mean, this is such a replicable thing to do, and it's so needed that the municipalities come to us and ask us how they can do it. And this is without a penny of government money. So we will just as one project to how we're bringing this to the consumer, we will cover 100% of Crook County, Oregon's energy assistance off-takers. They will be completely covered, 100%, all of them, by this new community solar farm.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you. Ruth Ann, you've organization started with a mission of making housing more healthy, and you integrated energy efficiency into that mission. And I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how that happened and how the energy efficiency got integrated, and if you see lessons there or opportunities to expand that into renewable energies.
Sure. Thanks, and I'll try to get all of that. You might have to remind me a little bit. And your project is fantastic, by the way. So we actually started to look at data. We were making, in the work done by our partner cities, millions of dollars of investment in making houses lead safe and healthy. And I alluded to this in my opening remarks. And what we saw is that we thought we had the perfect answer in preventing lead poisoning for our families where it was so normalized in neighborhoods, and reducing asthma, where moving kids out of the ER and getting them into the classroom. And we were still finding that our families were moving at a very high rate, lots of turnover happening, and really started to think about it. And by doing what you should do is ask the people most impacted, we realized that the energy bills were going through the roof and causing the instability, and people would move from houses where they were safer. And so that prompted me, which I should do more of and rarely do, but I wrote a paper. And I said, there was an incoming president, and he's saying he's going to make a $5 billion investment in weatherization. And he's got to think about lead and asthma and all these other things for two reasons. One, we need it on the healthy housing side to better stabilize our families and to help them with wealth retention. But also, the point we made is that if we were going to make that investment and not pay attention to the other ills in the house, right? You can't just put the solar on the roof if the roof isn't stable and everything else is going wrong, is that we had to think about how to be better aligned, and that if we didn't do it, right, you didn't want to have a headline that we sealed up a house, made it energy efficient, and by the way, we left behind a bunch of lead hazards and asthmagens, and the kids are still in the hospital, or even at a higher rate. So the Obama administration paid deep attention to that and gave us a grant to lift our work up and move from just the healthy housing work to do more of the integration. But we also did it because we saw the opportunity of jobs in community. What we knew and what we know from doing our work is Cornell University did a study on our work in Buffalo and said by having cross-trained workers who know how to deal with health-based housing issues and weatherization and energy efficiency and other opportunities, that we were going to and we were raising wages $4 to $8 an hour. For many people, especially as they come in from property management to become into construction and contracting, that becomes a life-changing part of the work. And we also saw the opportunity, really, to build wealth in communities better, and in that stabilization, if you think about the issue of equity, and people lose their homes because of poorly weatherized housing and the bills get high and that house gets lost or it becomes unfit for an older adult to age in place, they move to assisted living and there goes the cost on that. We have ended the ability to do wealth transfer. So that's another point of equity for us, right? Mm-hmm. But what we mostly focus on so much is that by doing all of this, we are lowering respiratory disease, we are lowering cardiac issues, we are lowering injury issues. And the thing that I think that we need to be more amplifying, more studying, more look at is we are also improving the quality of emotional health through all of this, not to mention the opportunities in community for work. I think about in Baltimore and in many of the cities in which we work, in Jackson, Mississippi, I think about the acres and acres of housing and row housing where there are these roofs not surrounded by good opportunities to be putting solar on, and mostly what our community residents have gotten a lot is hot water heaters and the like, but they need more of an opportunity to be involved in the generation of that and the sale back of that. That's an opportunity there that's so important. So I think I could talk about this for a long time, but let's continue on with this discussion.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, this is very rich. Emma, you've worked to encourage states and communities to adopt 100% clean energy goals. And in that work, how have the community benefits of the clean energy factored in to your work, and what kind of feedback do you get from policymakers on those benefits?
Sure. Well, I'll start by saying that many of the state and city leaders that we work with are really starting to recognize what renewable energy can do for their communities. So we're seeing that policymakers recognize the value in the environmental benefits of transitioning to renewable energy, the health benefits as well, of course, that come along with reducing air pollution and shifting away from dirty energy sources. As well as, grid benefits. We see improved efficiency and greater resilience in the face of natural disasters with some renewable energy investments. And another, I think, motivator for a lot of policymakers at both levels are the continually declining costs and opportunity for savings that may come with switching to renewable energy for their constituents. And those are all perfectly valid, great reasons to be considering a commitment to renewable energy, and ones that we're seeing increasingly commonly. And I think the other key motivator and place that consumer benefits comes in is actually from the consumers themselves and the constituents. States and cities alike are, I think, very motivated right now to adopt really ambitious, clean or renewable energy targets because of the huge amount of public support and demand for those kind of ambitious targets that match the scale of the climate crisis we're facing. And we've seen a real surge in activism over the last few years, thinking about youth leaders like Greta Thunberg, or unprecedented scale protests of government inaction at every level. That's something that our leaders at every level are certainly seeing and responding to and realizing is a real sense of public urgency. So I think it's, in part thanks to the public's understanding of those benefits, as well as, decades of advocacy and public engagement from groups that are, talking right now, that have helped get us to this cultural tipping point in terms of broad acceptance of the benefits of renewable energy and the need to move in that direction. And our leaders are seeing that.
Great. From each of your perspectives, and I am going to go around for each of you and ask, pick one action that you think needs to be taken today that would advance the work that you're doing most quickly. What's the action that we can do that would advance this? Steve, I'll start with you.
I was going to do like I do in a restaurant and ask you to pick me last.
I could do that.
Okay, let's do that. I want to plagiarize some of the more intelligent responses.
Janine, would you?
I think aggregation. The residential class represents approximately 40% of a utility's load, and it varies from state to state, utility to utility. So I'm using sort of the average from Ohio, and it's a little bit over 40%. So that's a significant amount of load, and it's easier. It's easier to focus on commercial and industrial because they have larger loads, less work, more consolidated. But we would be remiss if we didn't also focus on residential, because you're leaving a lot of opportunity on the table. And to make it easy for customers, to make it accessible for customers, we need to start looking at concepts like aggregation of distributed energy resources. We have aggregation in about 3 or 4 states across the nation, Ohio being one of them, for picking a supplier for natural gas or electricity. Why not expand that and have municipalities working with various companies that offer distributed energy resource products, demand response products, to work with their customers directly to make it easy and financeable, or doing large-scale municipal community solar to make and having virtual power. But all of that for many of the jurisdictions is going to require enabling legislation to make that happen. And then that would follow through with the commissions then enacting tariffs and regulations and whatever else needed to be put in place to enable the interconnection, depending upon what the technology is among the distributed energy resources, but to make sure you have the appropriate tariffs, that the barriers are removed, and for the commissions to feel that they are empowered to move in that direction.
Great. Ruth Ann?
I think really to see for those who are investing in social determinants of health, right, the healthcare institutions and Medicaid and anchor institutions around the country, to see the non-energy benefits of energy efficiency in terms of health trajectory and outcomes that line up with social determinants, right? And I talked about stability and wealth retention and the ability to get in the classroom, as those are major drivers, those are the social determinants of health as well. And I think by doing that and making the investments in energy efficiency to be on the scale of every nonprofit hospital in America has to invest hospital community benefits in their community. This should be one of those that are on the list that they should be doing. It should be part of Medicaid and Medicare Advantage to say doing energy efficiency is important, because getting elderly individuals out of extreme heat and extreme cold has so much to do with cardiac health and has so much to do with long-term health, that this needs to be a reimbursable health measure to help be a support in this system, not to carry the full load on its shoulders alone, but it has to be a part of it.
Great. Pari?
I think for me, another angle that we should really identify and work towards is wealth creation at the local community level, especially speaking from the point of view of low-income communities and environmental justice communities. Clean energy access is important. Health is very important. But at the end of the day, people ask questions, well, how am I benefiting from clean energy? So job creation is one aspect, but going beyond that, looking at entrepreneurial activities, providing expertise and training on how individuals can start their own enterprises, how they can learn new skills that would get them into the mainstream clean energy economy. And you talk to, at least in my experience, when I talk to partners at the local level, this is their number one priority. They don't want the state to create wealth in clean energy but not see that trickle down to their communities.
Emma?
Sorry, taking myself off mute. So I would take a step back here. I mean, obviously these are all incredibly important policy and regulatory shifts that we'll need to get to a 100% renewable energy future. But I'll go with an unsurprising answer that what we would, one of the steps we would say would make the biggest impact would be for local and state governments to take the step of committing to 100% renewable energy. That's why one of the reasons we campaign so much for that. And our thinking here is that codifying this kind of target or goal into a legally binding commitment will really help ensure that we do all of the things Janine and Roseanne and Pari are talking about that help us actually move in that right direction by making sure that our energy goal, where we want to get, becomes a part of every energy decision we make as communities. And what I would add to that is that, in terms of making sure these that renewable and clean energy benefits are widespread and reach everyone, we know that one of the best ways we can ensure that everyone benefits from clean energy is simply to ramp up the pace of clean and renewable energy adoption. Our current energy system is bad for consumers, for public health, for the environment, and the sooner we move completely away from it, the more benefits we'll see across every segment of society. So we want to be, having our foot on the gas pedal and seeing these commitments enshrined in law so that we make sure they ensure action.
Okay, Steve.
Oh. So I've been thinking about this. Thank you for the break. And realize that there are three short topics here. There's There's the consumer, and I 100% agree with what you're saying residentially. It's such a varied market, especially when you start adding in the households that community action deals with. There are 100 different variants of poverty, and they're more emotional for a vulnerable population than just consumer interface. Then there's the regulatory, which I'm so happy to be sitting in this room to talk about, because literally everybody in this room is moving regulation and legislation in one way or the other to be able to facilitate the move to 100%, as well as not to leave out those that need to be brought forward when it would be so easy to do. But I would say in the shortest term that a defined definition of, say, the anti-poverty market that I'm talking about, who are the households that really need the most help, who are the most vulnerable, who if they don't get what they think they're getting the first time, they're never going to come back, even if it's free. I would say the openness of the utilities, of co-ops, of organizations to acknowledge and work with organizations like ours to create products through them that address this population right now, while all the wonderful work you guys are doing in the room comes the way through, and then we can do that work at those times as you make the world better, while we try to do something right now. And I don't see that there is any easy way to do that without the help of the large renewable companies, the utilities who know they want to serve the market we only understand, but don't know how. So we would like to partner either consulting, and there's hundreds of groups around the country, not just us, that can do this, but they need to know that they need to understand that person and that family.
That's a great segue to my last question, which is what can the energy efficiency and renewable energy private sector do to better serve low and moderate income customers? Janine, do you have?
Well, we need more comprehensive programs for starters. And there are HWAP dollars, Home Weatherization Assistance Program dollars that are available. Those are a subset of the LIHEAP, the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Programs. And some states can allocate up to about 25%. I think there's maybe a limit on that. But what we did in Ohio when I was the Consumers Council is that we had utility programs for energy efficiency. We had negotiated with the utilities to do them. And what we did was we took, for the residential dollars, 1/3 of those dollars and said this 1/3 is going to be used strictly for low income. We worked with the community action agencies in Ohio, and so that they could take the money from both HWAP, which has some requirements and restrictions on what you can and can't use the money for, and combine that with the utility dollars to be able to do more comprehensive home weatherization for a number of households. And then we had other programs for residential, like CFL light bulbs and other kinds of things where any customer, low income or not, could take advantage of. So I think that that's one of the important things, is to try to find partnerships to leverage public sources of money with private sources of money to expand the availability of dollars to be able to get into those communities. And that's just one example. There's a whole bunch of other things that you can do as well, such as pay-as-you-go financing for some customers, where you have utilities in some states aren't really doing a whole lot on energy efficiency. Pay-as-you-go, if it's structured correctly, and this is the key thing, is to make sure that whatever the customer is paying for their electricity is less than what they would have paid, and over a period of time, they're paying back the amount of money that was spent on the energy efficiency in their home, but the increments are small enough that they can see a savings on their bill every single month. And this is important because you don't want it to raise rates, because you don't want to increase the possibility of these customers being disconnected for non-payment because their bills have gone up. So if their bills have gone down, if they're disconnected, they would have been disconnected anyway. And hopefully we have better programs to avoid that from happening. And that's a whole nother topic.
Thank you. Ruth Ann, thoughts on how the private sector can help here?
Well, I think in the world that I work in, one is to look at the opportunity of employment in low-income communities and the brilliantly talented people who are trapped in poverty who can really help lift this market. So I think that's key, right? And really to deliver equity back on all of this, it has to be investments in communities, not just we want to put renewable energies into communities, but that the community has to be a part of that ownership. So I think that's one key important thing. You know, I think about especially solar, you know, in my conversations with families that we serve, there's a big fear of getting involved in solar. They're afraid to get ripped off. So I do think there is, I mean, to kind of speak a little truth here, there has to be a better relationship built, things that actually kind of meet people where they are. And there need to be good programs that have constancy and consistency in communities like CAP, where the programs can be trusted or known. And that gets back to hiring people from community to do that. So I would say that those are two things that seem rather simple, but I think would be quite large. And I think some of those lessons translate to middle income and upper income communities as well. I just live in a different market.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. Pari?
Sure, and I'll echo what Ruth Ann said. I think it's very important as we talk about 100% clean energy future, that energy efficiency and renewable energy industry treat it as a partnership with low-income communities and environmental justice communities. Those communities are the best source of information on what their needs are and how quickly they can get to a clean energy future. So the solutions have to come from them as well. And I think if you spend time building those relationships, hearing out the needs, you would be in a better position to create business models that are profitable and also help us get to a cleaner future.
Emma, do you have any comment on this?
Sure. I mean, this will echo, I think, what Pari especially and Ruth Ann was also saying, but we need to work with the private sector, with energy companies and developers, providers, to achieve these ambitious renewable targets. And these companies and providers can and should engage with frontline communities, with local and state governments to help deliver on goals, and should be treated as stakeholders in the process. And as Pari was saying, keeping the public good in mind, and making sure that they're aligning with actual needs of communities is a great place to start.
Thank you. So I think now we'll give you the opportunity to ask any questions. Are there any questions? Steve?
I have a question.
Yeah.
No, per your last the last topic, immediate solutions. Obviously, there needs to be an education that these programs are out there to begin with, but if you take it from the private sector, a real embrace of social impact bonds. Nobody really knows how they work. The metrics are difficult to set up. The risk is all borne by the investor and then the municipality somehow always pays for it. These types of tools are readily available from Wall Street foundations and other areas. And I mentioned this in the workforce breakout last time. Kudos to Grid Alternatives. That there in the enabling legislation for weatherization, there is a list of things that you can do with the money. Someone needs to put at the end, and solar. And if they do that, then all of the workforce development programs that are done for weatherization can also be built for solar as well at the same time. And Community Action Network actually has a very, very large training network inside of its inside of inside of its agencies. So that's the social impact bond. I think would be the private investment that is necessary immediately.
No, it's just a market I know well. We've spent 6 years in the Pay for Success social impact bond, so I'm happy to talk to you about it a lot offline of what's good and bad, but we have to lower the transaction fees, which are too big and too enormous. And it does offer promise, though, to be able to scale community organizations and scale the ability to do this work. But there's some work to be done to fine tune that.
Yep. Question?
Yeah, I was thinking, for those of you that are working directly in the communities that we've been talking about a lot, or you guys have been talking about a lot in the panel, what is one thing that you think the community members would most like this audience to know today? Like, if they could say, one thing I think you don't understand about what my needs are, what my interests are, is there something that rises to the fore that you want, help us hear them here in the room?
I think from my experience, they want you to listen to them. I think oftentimes clean energy advocates go into the communities and we tell them how clean energy would benefit them, not really understanding what their needs are, how they are being impacted by fossil fuel industries, by a lack of resources. So one thing we can all do is be better listeners.
I think the other thing is to pay attention to affordability. That is the biggest issue, and a lot of the programs that clean energy advocates put forward in regulatory proceedings cost money, and they cost utility rate money, which is paid for by the ratepayers. And one consumer advocate I know summarized it as saying, "Thank you for spending my money." So there needs to be more education and outreach and finding ways to make this benefit customers, because there's the short-term cost that's immediate, that impacts rates for customers who can't afford it when 1/3 of customers are struggling. And then there is the long-term benefit. And there's a disconnect between the two, especially when a customer is making decisions between medicine, paying their rent, paying their utilities, and now you want to raise their rates. No, thank you. So there really needs to be, and this is something I've heard over and over from consumer advocates, is the clean energy companies and advocates, they sweep in, they make their positions, and they leave. But they haven't talked with us. They haven't tried to negotiate with us. They haven't tried to form coalitions with us so that we can find a win-win solution. And I think there needs to be a lot more effort on the part of the clean energy community to work with the consumers so that they're not in a just say no mode, but more in a okay, how can we make this work for everybody? And thank you for that question.
Can I add? So I always talk about, you want to build a relationship that's trusted in community, you have to have constancy and consistency in your presence, your accessibility, and in what you do. So I think that is so incredibly important. And the engagement can't be tokenized, and it can't be temporary, and it cannot be shallow. And so I think that if you go into that knowing that and craft what you're doing with that in mind, and very purposely with that in mind, you will get a foothold over time to build that, which is, anybody going to go buy anything or engage in anything, you have to have some level of trust that's there, and that has to be built in many ways. And that comes from being very transparent about regulation, about transactions, about outcomes, and being accessible to be there for the follow-up to that.
I'm going to take this one. That is a very good question. It kind of is answered by what Janine said in the very beginning about residential customers. They're all different, and they're much more different than we have time to talk about. So how do you take, we hear this a lot in Head Start, we hear it in weatherization and energy assistance, especially if a payment hasn't been approved. You don't know who I am. You don't know me. You're not going through what I'm going through. And I'm talking about the market segment that I'm talking about. You have to build a trust, because there is a very good chance, especially with this market, which is very fixed. It's in a box, payment-wise and or other. It has to work as an investment. It's very cold and impersonal. How do you tell someone that we care and that we're going to take care of your specific needs when the product that they're involving themselves with is generic? We need to make the interaction at least more personal, so that, and transparent is so big, so that whatever the outcome is they know you did what you were supposed to do, and that will continue to trust for other projects that you bring.
Great, thank you. Emma, did you have anything to add? Emma, did you have anything?
I think that was very well covered by the folks who've already spoken. I think the only other thing I would add is, in addition to all of those things, which should certainly be priorities, is keeping things simple to the extent that's possible. One thing that I see all the time, especially at the city level, is that not everyone has the time or interest in getting this as far into the weeds as the folks speaking today or at this conference today might be able to do. So anything we can do to make energy options not only transparent but approachable and straightforward and easy to tell when you are or aren't getting scammed, and what the specific benefits to you are going to be. Anything that regulators and policymakers can do to make that all as upfront and easy to access as possible, the better.
Great. Well, thank you. That brings us to the end of this panel. Let's thank our great panelists and their great wisdom for this conversation.